When we consider connective tissue, there are three major parts to it. First of all, there is an extracellular matrix, which is what is found outside of the cell, as the name implies. The extracellular matrix is made up of two substances, the first of which are fibers, and these fibers come in three different types. There's a collagen fiber, an elastic fiber, and a reticular fiber. And not all types of connective tissue are going to have all three types of fibers. It's going to depend on that specific type of connective tissue. And when you are naming the type of connective tissue, you want to consider those three different types of fibers. The next part of the extracellular matrix is what's called the ground substance. And the ground substance has interstitial fluid, which remember is a type of extracellular fluid, but it's found between cells. It also has some various chemicals in it, which sort of act like glue to hold everything together. The third component of connective tissue are cells. And again, these cells are going to vary also based on the type of connective tissue. So everything that you see on this screen doesn't really exist as a type of connective tissue. That's why the title of the screen is a prototypical or model of connective tissue. It's just to introduce you to all the different items that may be found in connective tissue. For example, there would be a fat cell if, in fact, it was adipose tissue. There would be a what's called a neutrophil, which you don't need to know yet what that is. You'll learn about that in A&P2, but it's a white blood cell, and so that would be present if this was the connective tissue of blood. So let's start looking at the types of connective tissue and recall that there are three types of loose connective tissue. Loose connective tissue means there's a lot of space between the fibers and between the cells. So areolar connective tissue has a gel-like extracellular matrix with the three fiber types. So this is one of those exceptions where there are elastic fibers, collagen fibers, and there are some reticular fibers which aren't shown in this exact micrograph. But cells are things like fibroblasts, macrophages, mast cells, and some white blood cells, which have to do with the kind of the immune system, the lymphatic system, and fibroblasts are used to produce specific fibers. Their function is that they wrap and cushion organs. The macrophages are going to phagocytize bacteria. So they play an important role in inflammation and they convey tissue fluid. So they are located under epithelia and especially the lamina propria of mucous membranes. They package organs and surround capillaries. A little analogy I like to think of with loose areolar connective tissue is that it's kind of like bubble wrap that you get in the mail that's going to package your very fragile items that are found in that box. So that's what areolar connective tissue is. The next type of loose connective tissue is adipose tissue. And adipose tissue means that it has the cells called adipocytes in them. And the matrix is like areolar. They're closely packed adipocytes. And what happens is that the nucleus is actually pushed to the side by a large fat droplet. And this fat droplet is going to contain triglycerides, which you remember from chapter 2 is a type of a polymer of fat. So the function of adipose tissue is that it provides reserve food fuel, insulation against heat loss, and also protects the organ. So we would find it under the skin in subcutaneous fat, around the kidneys and the eyeballs, within the abdomen and the breast. So we all can relate to adipose tissue because we all have more of it than we actually want, the majority of us. So those love handles, for example, are going to have lots of adipose tissue. And one thing I want to make you aware of, especially for lab, is this looks similar to simple squamous epithelium. But in simple squamous epithelium, you'll see a lot more nuclei. Also, the cells are not going to be almost perfectly round. And adipose tissue is almost perfectly round. The other thing is, it almost looks like a ring from a cross section. And it looks like a ring if you could imagine that this is the jewel on the ring and the rest of the membrane for the adipocyte would be the ring itself. The third type of loose connective tissue is what we call reticular connective tissue. And reticular connective tissue is going to be branched, which makes it stick out. It's a loose network of reticular fibers, also still a gel-like ground substance. And the function of these is that the fibers form a soft skeleton, which is called a stroma. And it includes cells like white blood cells, mast cells, and macrophages. So the place that we find reticular tissue is in all lymphatic related tissue. So lymphoid organs like the lymph nodes, the bone marrow, as well as the spleen. So you can see there are white blood cells that are shown here. This happens to be a type of white blood cell called a lymphocyte. There's 5 different types of white blood cells. And again, you're not going to learn that until A and P2. So that's not important to know right now. But the reticular fibers, they almost look like tree branches, and they all go in different directions, and they form this sort of soft internal skeleton called a stroma, where white blood cells and other immune cells can sort of hang out so that they can attack foreign invaders as part of the immune system. So those are our first 3 examples of connective tissue. And um, they're going to be the first 3. So in the next video, we're going to go over the 3 types of dense connective tissue. So again, remember that the connective tissues are going to require more time to study because there are 11 different types of them. We've covered 3 so far. We'll cover 3 in the next video, 3 cartilages, and then there's bone as well as blood.